Hey, welcome back, Rise Up Nation. I'm excited to have you here for another edition of Rise Up in Real Estate. We're in season 4, right in the thick of it, just finding out what is working and what's not for people out there in in the saddle doing real estate, trying to make it happen. And I've got a real practitioner with me today, just a good human being, hardworking, very experienced in a lot of different areas of life. I'm just so excited to have an agent that's practicing real estate, team leader, Mr. Sean Austin with Remax Professionals. Sean, super happy to have you on the show today.
I'm excited. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it is. I've played golf with Sean. I have watched him do his thing on the committee at his association. I've watched him eat at a Thanksgiving meal. You're just seem like a good dude, man. I don't know. Tell me a little bit about where you're from and a little bit about your upbringing that makes you who you are.
I actually grew up in Marlboro County in Bennettsville, and was fortunate to be the child of two college-educated parents who was a little different, in the community that I grew up in. That was almost a rarity, and was very fortunate growing up. We didn't have a lot. Both my parents worked for the state. My mother was a teacher, and my father worked for the Employment Security Commission. So we had a roof over our head and clothes and transportation, but I never got to go to Disney World or do anything really special as a child, and it really motivated me to want to have a better life, a more materialistic life as I got older. And fortunately, I grew up, having to work, and I worked on two farms. And that really, I started working on a farm down the road from my house at age 10, cleaning stables and baling hay and feeding horses. And it really instilled at a young age a work ethic in me. And by the time I was in high school, I was driving a school bus in the morning and the afternoon, playing football and baseball, where I lettered for 4 years in varsity in both. And then on the weekends, I would work on the farm, and I worked at McDonald's, opening up for breakfast. So I was just always busy, and that transpired even into my adult life, where I realized the harder I worked, the luckier I got, and that's just been. I don't mind putting in a 12, 14, 16 hour day if I need to, if that's what you got to do to get the job done.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I mean, it sounds like did you sleep at all in high school, or it doesn't sound like
Yeah,
you slept much?
very little. Very little. I think I would run on 3 or 4 hours of sleep back in my younger days. I need a little bit more now, but back then, I could run on 4 hours of sleep and go all day.
I've
Um, you know,
never, I, I've never, I've never heard of someone in high school driving the bus before. That's pretty cool.
yeah,
And you were
yeah.
working a couple of other jobs too. So this real estate's easy compared to what you grew up doing. I mean, listen to what you were
Uh,
doing. That was a good training ground for hard work. Tell me
I,
about your family. Tell me about your family now. You're married and you got a little bit going on over there.
yep, married to Dr. Christy Austin, who's finishing up her 30th year in education and is actually taking a new job with the State Department of Education, where she'll be over the standards and assessments for the entire state. In fact, she starts tomorrow. And I've got a 26-year-old son who graduated from South Carolina, went back and got his master's in adapted PE, and he is the special needs PE teacher in Richland County, in Columbia. And he works with special needs children all day, which is very heartwarming, to see. He sends me videos sometimes. This takes a special person and a big heart to be able to do that every day. And when I got into college, I went to work in the jewelry business as a cashier at Christmas time. Somebody quit that December, and they asked me if I wanted to sell, and I started selling, and I worked my way through school, part time and full time. And after that, got offered to go into management and did some assistant manager and training program, and then got recruited by Zales at 24 to go manage a store for them. And I did that for 5 years, and at the age of 29, which is 1999, at the beginning of 2000, got promoted to a regional manager for Zales Jewelers, and I was covering 10 stores in the Carolinas. Then got recruited by Freedman's Jewelers and supervised as a regional manager, 16 stores with them in the Carolinas, and In 2007, they filed bankruptcy and liquidated. So at that point, I was actually in the process of opening a restaurant in Florence with a cousin, and we got it up and running in 2007 and realized that wasn't what I wanted to do. And it was a tough time of year. And, especially there at the end, and I closed it down and in December of 2007. And then I went to work for Sally Beauty Supply and eventually was running 23 stores with Sally Beauty Supply in the Carolinas, which kept me pretty busy. And, at the end of it, close to 28 years, I could see and feel the Amazon effect. And, the foot traffic just every month was dropping, 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 and realized that, I needed to do something else with my life. And a girl that was in the jewelry business with me, who is a regional manager for sales, my son worked for in Columbia. Um, my son calls me one day and says, Christine's not our boss anymore. And I thought she had gone to another jewelry company. I was calling her, see what she was doing. And she said, I went into real estate and I just closed my first deal and made $7,500. I said, tell me more. And that was February 15th. It'll be 6 years I've been doing this. And so I started looking into it and, got into it and interviewed realtors before I even went to school, and then interviewed brokerages. And I was looking for a brokerage that was going to invest some time in me and to help, ensure my success so that I could build a solid foundation to work off of. Because I was afraid if I got thrown out to the sharks that I would develop bad habits that I would end up spending a lot of time trying to fix down the road. And I found in my market that didn't really exist. So I went to plan B, which was figure out who's doing the most volume out of all the brokerages and go to work for them. If you surround
Right.
yourself with great
Mhm.
people, eventually you're going to be great too. And I started out with Remax. And I can remember when I first started, going to events and open houses, and I tell people I was at Remax and I was a brand new agent. They all looked at me like I was from Mars, and almost like I was dumb. What are you thinking? Going to Remax to start with? That's for seasoned, tenured agents. And all I could think of is they've got some top producing agents in there. I'm a fly on the wall. I want to hang out with them because they're doing what they need to do to be successful, and that's what I want to do. So, and then 3 years later led me to you guys, which has been an absolute blessing. Absolute blessing.
Yeah, it's been that way both ways. So I'm just your story fascinates me. I would be remiss if I didn't allow you a moment to shout out to your Gamecocks because I know my wife will not be happy that I did this, but I'm gonna do it anyway. You are a diehard Gamecock fan, is that right? Your son went
That,
there.
that's one of my big faults. My wife has two master's degrees from there. My son has an undergrad and a master's degree from there, and grew up a Gamecock fan. And I remember in the second grade, a girl was taking a poll in the classroom, and she walks up and asked if I was a Carolina or Tiger fan, and I said, "Which one are you?" And she said, "Tiger." I said, "Well, then I'm a Gamecock fan," and that's how it all started. And my wife laughs at me. She calls it my uniform. I have so many Carolina sweatshirts and T-shirts when I'm not working. That's typically what I'm wearing is Carolina gear. And loyal tailgater on Saturdays. I enjoy the whole atmosphere, and that's the one thing I do take off, to go do is go cheer them on. And the Spurrier years were great, and hopefully the Beamer years will be better.
Yeah, it's going to be. I think you're on the upswing. I think for sure, a lot of promise there. So you're no stranger to hard work. I mean, you
Oh
have
no,
worked yourself through working on the farm, working at McDonald's, driving a school bus, playing two sports as a letter person, and you then got into like sales management, and it sounds like you killed it in that too. You just went right straight to the top. I know when you first came to Remax Southern Shores, Remax Professionals. And I met this guy that worked in jewelry sales, jewelry management. The next thing I know, you're doing 60, 70, 80 transactions. I was like, what? How's this guy doing it? I mean, you're just so laid back. I want to talk to you a little bit about real estate sales just for a minute and tell me what works for you, Sean. You've been in it 6 years, and let's not be shy. You do a lot of business for one guy and a teammate. Y'all do how many transactions did you do in 2023, if you don't mind me asking?
we did 73 together.
Okay, that and in Florence market, I would say as a pair, that was probably up there with the elite. I mean, that's one of the top producing pairs in all of your MLS.
Yeah.
What works for you? What do you attribute it to? Talk to me about that for a minute.
Yeah, I reflected on a lot of that, you know, preparing for this, and I go back to Brian Tracy when I was a regional manager. You know, back in those days, we listened to cassettes, and you know, I was always listening to Zig Ziglar, or Brian Tracy, or John Maxwell, and you know, some of the great leaders out there. But you know, Brian Tracy probably had one of the biggest impacts on me as a young adult and learning how to manage people. And I think the biggest factor, what I call, is the friendship factor, and you know, glittering generalities, if you will. And I had to learn this in the jewelry industry. Is you know, you've got to be a chameleon in sales, and you need to, you know, be genuinely interested in the people that you're working with, and you know, find common ground. And you know, that 6 or 7 degrees of separation is pretty much true, you know. And as I talk to people, you know, we find out at some place, some form or fashion, we have things in common. And once I can figure out those things that are in common, you know, they become my friend. And the reality is people buy from people they like, and they really want to buy from their friends. And so, you know, just becoming somebody's friend in the beginning and letting them know that, you know, hey, you know, this is more than a transaction to me. This is about being, you know, establishing a relationship that's, you know, a long-term relationship. It's not a one-night stand for me. This is going to be a long-term marriage for me. And I think that makes a lot of difference.
And you got that. Was there a specific book that you read when you with Brian Tracy, or just all the ones that they're all so good?
You know, thinking about all the, you know, the different books that I've read, and John Maxwell and Lou Holtz and other, you know, leadership people out there. You know, I thought back, I think the one book that really had the biggest impact on me that I would encourage everybody to read by Brian Tracy is Eat That Frog.
Yep.
And you know, and that's the old adage, if you know, if you've got to get up every day and you know you've got to eat a big green frog, you know, do you want to do it first thing in the morning and get it over with so you spend the rest of your day doing something else, or do you want to wait till the end of the day and you got to think about all day long that I've got to eat that frog? And I can tell you, in management, when I first started managing humans and I had to have those tough conversations, you know, initially I would get so worked up and stressed about, you know, a fantasy world that, you know, something bad was going to happen, or they were going to beat me up or cuss me out. And, you know, I would wait till the end of the day, and then I would write them up so I could go get my car and leave. And I realized how horrible that was after listening and reading that book. And, you know, it changed me so that, you know, I got to where I would address the negatives first thing in the morning so that I could spend the rest of the day working with them to let them know that, hey, I want to, you know, I want to help you get better. You know, I did, you know, the reason I got on you in the mornings because I want you to get better, and I'm going to spend the rest of the day helping you be a better leader and manager in your store. So great read. I need to go back and read it again.
Yeah, I've heard of that one before. I think I've read that in the past, but good reminder that I probably should read it again. Tell me, your Vince was bragging about you in the role play a couple of weeks ago. Where we're talking a little bit about buyers and sellers, buyers agency, and he said you were spot on. And I'm gonna ask you a question kind of off the cuff here, but how do you, when you meet somebody new, Sean, is there a certain um, when you're meeting a new buyer, a new seller, is there a certain list of things that you try to cover to find that point of connection? Or is it just so natural to you now, you just don't even think about it? How does it go for you?
You know, Ted, I think the first thing that's going to make anybody successful is PMA, not PMS, but PMA, and
Okay.
that's just positive mental attitude. You know, and if you know if you're going to believe, I mean, if you're going to exceed, you must first believe. And you know, teaching people how to sell jewelry for almost, you know, 15 years, you know, you learn that, you know, having a positive mental attitude up front is contagious, and being optimistic is contagious. And, you know, letting people know that, hey, this is going to be a fun ride. You know, I mean, to me, real estate, and I tell people this all the time, you know, hey, we're on our way to Disney World. That doesn't mean that we're not going to get stuck in a traffic jam or run off the road or hit a pothole and get a flat tire, maybe even run out of gas. but at some point we're going to get to Disney World and it's going to be fun. And, positive mental attitude is important. And I think, obviously developing a relationship and building a rapport with people. I went last night to a listing appointment and they were nowhere near ready to list. And I stayed there for 2 hours just talking with these people about life. And, I knew a relative of theirs and, we talked about them and, it wasn't about trying to make a dollar. It was about trying to make a relationship that was going to be long standing. Something else Brian Tracy said to me that made a huge impact was you haven't earned a customer until you've sold them something a second time. Sometimes people get lucky. You're in real estate or in the jewelry industry, and somebody walks in, and it's the day of their anniversary. They hadn't bought anything, and they run in and buy something from you. That's not really a customer. You know, until you prove to them that you're their guy, until they come back to you a second time or a third time, then you've actually earned them as a client. And I think about that in real estate. I may get lucky with a listing or with a buyer, but I really haven't done my job until they actually refer me to somebody else or until they, call me again and let me help them again. And, I look back in 6 years time of doing this. I mean, and there's a couple properties that I've sold 3 times, over 6 years, just because of the relationship that I developed with the people in the beginning. So, um, I guess I'm fortunate too, in that I don't show stress. I'm not pushing people, and I tend to have an attitude of, and I probably have talked myself out of more sales than I've made just by letting people that this isn't about me and me making money. This is about helping you achieve your dreams, and that's old Zig Ziglar. If I help enough people get what they want, eventually I'm going to get what I want. And so I sort of operate that way when I meet buyers or sellers. That I'm in this for the long haul with you, buddy. This isn't anything. This isn't a get rich quick scheme for me.
Yeah, there's so much gold in what you just said. You probably see, you guys see me looking down at my, no, I'm not doing other work. I'm writing notes about what you're saying. I mean, I love the Disney, we're on the way to Disney World illustration. Like that's a great idea to put in their head. You're exactly right. When you start with a positive attitude in the beginning, people's guard goes down. They want to be around you. They want to relate to you. I mean, how many people would you think sitting in a listing? I don't know how far along in that listing presentation last night. How far along were you into it when you realized they were not anywhere near ready to sell?
I knew when I walked in the door that, that they weren't ready.
So, and you were there for 2 hours. I wonder how many people would have abandoned ship way before, especially somebody like you, Sean. You've made enough, you make enough money. You don't need the next one necessarily, but you really do genuinely enjoy people, don't you?
Yeah, I really did, and I found it hard to leave last night. But I'm probably told them bye 5 or 6 times, because I'd say, okay, I'm gonna get out of y'all's hair, and we'd start talking about something else, and it just listening to them. They had a child that was 20 years old and autistic, and so just there was just things about them that I found genuinely interesting. I typically find people interesting, and I think that makes a difference. People like to talk about themselves, and if I can just find those things that they like to talk about and continue to question them about them, they're going to enjoy being around me. When I'm an old believer too that positivity breeds positivity and negativity breeds negativity. So, and you can choose, whether you're going to be positive or negative. And I choose on a daily basis to be positive.
I can tell that you are well read and you study and you have in your past because you just roll out these Zig Ziglar quotes. I heard a John Maxwell quote a few minutes ago. I've heard you talk about Brian Tracy. These are not for the faint of heart reading either. It's not, this is serious reading. I love it that you're that well read. I'd never heard the your comment about they're really not, you really hadn't done nothing until you sell them something twice. I mean, that is so true. Like that's when they really recognize, you really recognize they know your value and your worth, don't they? When they come
Yeah.
back.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you when I started managing the Zales store in Florence, South Carolina, 3 years in a row, I had the highest comp increase of any of the stores in the mall. And, people were coming to me, and other jewelry stores were moving into the mall because of the increase in business. And, it was almost people had to make appointments to meet with me because I had so many clients that wanted to see me, and they would just come in and wait. And I'd try to turn them over to other people and say, she's going to help you, she'll take care of you. And I learned that I needed to be the quarterback of the sales floor. So I put my keys up and I got from behind the cases, and I stayed on the outside of the cases where all the customers were. So when people came in that had bought from me before, I was able to walk around and talk to everybody in the store instead of getting trapped behind the case with one. And then I had 5 other people that didn't get my attention. So that was a tough pill to swallow when it happened. But I literally locked my keys up in the safe and said, I'm gonna talk to everybody that comes in. And I hope this isn't offensive to someone, but I always think about the old story of the Papa Bull and the Sun Bull standing at the top of a hill looking down in the valley at a whole bunch of heifers down there. And the son gets all excited and says, Dad, let's run down there and have sex with one of those heifers. And the dad says, I got a better idea, son. Let's walk down there and have sex with all of them. And I thought about that in the jewelry business, and it was a matter of walking around and talking to everybody and not getting trapped with just one. It made a huge difference. I took a $500,000 store to $1.5 million in 3.5 years' time, which got me into a regional manager position.
And you're doing a little bit of that now as you grow your team, aren't you, Sean? I mean, you can't do all of it, so you've got an incredible team member now. Actually, she was rookie. We should shout out to her. She was rookie of the year in your
Of the year.
association, which is amazing. Her first year with you, which is incredible. But talk about how that's been. That's kind of like locking your keys in a safe. You're trusting her with a bunch of it, aren't you?
Yeah. It really, I think about things and how the good Lord touches me in so many different ways. And kind of a neat story. I'll try to make it brief, but I got called to list a property for a 93-year-old lady who had just been put in a home, and the family needed to sell the property to pay her bills to stay in this home. And 2 weeks goes by, and I don't have an offer. And all of a sudden, I get a call from a friend and says, "Will you show this to my mother-in-law? She's 86. She lives in South Florence, and she wants to be closer to us." I said, "Sure." So I go and meet her, and lo and behold, she puts in a contingent offer on her home selling in Florence. So I had to rush over and go list this house and try to get it sold. And I had about 2 weeks to get it done. And Kelsey comes along and brings an offer, and I get the offer and I look at it, and it was a kid that I had coached in baseball when he was 13 and 14 years old. So I knew him. And I'm going to come back to that deal closed, but I met Kelsey one night at the Realtor Association, and she had started in the business and went to work with Caldwell, and somebody introduced her to me. And she and I are standing there meeting for the first time, and the lady says, "You don't know who this is?" And I said, "No, I don't." And she said, "She lives on your street in your town of Lamar, population 1,000 people. And Kelsey literally lives 2 houses down from me." And I knew there was a girl that lived there, but I'd never met her. She was, 22, 23 years old, and I'd never even talked to her before. So we met at a realtor event. She then brings a buyer to a house that I needed to get sold so that I could sell this other house. And both of this was 86-year-old lady, 93-year-old lady that both had, good reasons why their homes needed to be sold. And Kelsey brings a buyer that I actually had coached in baseball. And I said, if that isn't divine intervention, I don't know what is. And we finally get closed. And a couple of days later, she calls me and says, I'm thinking about leaving and going to talk to EXP. And I said, well, wait a minute. If you're thinking about leaving, let's you and I talk. And, I sat down and talked to my wife about it. And I had Kelsey come over, and she and my wife sat and talked for about 2 hours. And, we started working together, and I just started feeding her all of my online leads and phone call leads and listing leads, and, bought some Zillow leads. And and along the way, just been kind of in her ear coaching her, with handling transactions and managing people. And, she ended up being rookie of the year. I'm proud of her. I really am. made me want to get another one to bring in and see if I could get them to be rookie of the year too, but a lot of that was Kelsey's hard work. I can't take all the credit for that. She put in the time, which is important.
What a story. I had no idea she lived right next to down the street from you and you didn't even know it. Holy cow, that's
I could
amazing.
see her house from my office, and I had no idea that who she was. I didn't even know she had been in real estate until
That's
I met her at
incredible.
the association one night.
That is incredible. And you're serving on the association now, aren't you, Sean?
This is my third year on the board. I got on 2.5 years ago, and got asked to take over YPN, and so I started handling YPN, and I got involved in education. So I'm a co-director with YPN and a co-director with the education committee. So I
Awesome.
spend, in fact, the next 2 days we have real estate 101 classes at the association, and I'll be there for both days, and I teach classes on branding, and I do role playing with another agent in front of brand new agents on listing presentations and buyer presentations, and it's pretty funny. They bust their phones out and start recording, wanting to hear. But I've done so many of them, I can just about do them without even looking at a piece of paper, and I can tell you, perfect practice makes for perfect performance. And in the jewelry industry, you had to role play. And, I know as a regional, I'd go into stores and these associates would be nervous to death, but I made them get in front of me and I'd make them sell a watch or sell a diamond or sell a diamond bracelet. And we taught the 9 smart selling skills, and I expected them to know all those selling skills. And they had to be able to execute all of them. And we would provide feedback and summarize and what they were doing to make them better. So that I could achieve. If I helped enough people make their numbers, eventually I was going to make my numbers.
That's neat. And let me ask you a burning question. You seem so what I call like abundance minded, not scarcity minded, but abundance minded. Like you sat down with those people for 2 hours last night. You knew you weren't going to make a penny yet on them, and just how when you first got it. I can imagine the day you quit your jewelry. No, you were in the beauty supply business. When you quit to get into real estate, what was that like? What was the transition like? Was it because I'm sure there are some listeners that are like, well, yeah, but it's easy for him. He had all this money, or now he's selling all this real estate. But was there ever any doubt?
My wife, I think, was nervous, as to what I was doing. When I told her what I was going to do, she's, said, "Do you have enough money to do this?" And I said, "Yeah, I do." And but I knew that I was going to get up, and I still do. I'm up every morning about 6:30, and typically by 8 o'clock, I'm in my office. And when I first started, our office opened at 8:30. I tried to be there every morning at 8:30, and I would hang out in the office for 2 or 3 hours, and I would talk to everybody that came in, and I would watch videos and read things. And fortunately, I was in an office where there was a lot of producing people, and I was smart enough to know that eventually they would throw me some scraps, and that's what that's kind of what I called it. That's not really appropriate, but that's what it was. But the people in the office saw me there. They saw me work, and they saw me trying to get better. And so these top producers in our office would start throwing me their scraps because they didn't want to go here. They didn't want to go there. They didn't want to list this $40,000 manufactured home. And I'll tell you a neat story. My very first deal was a Remax lead, and the guy was looking at a $39,000 house that was on auction.com. And I jumped right in with him, and I helped Mr. Hammett, buy this property. And I remember our broker saying, "This is a tough one to start out with." I watched that auction for 3 days like a hawk, trying to make sure that I got this property. And eventually we got it. And he spent 3 months working on it and got it fixed up. And he called me, and I go down and I list this property for $89,900. I ended up bringing a VA buyer for $93,000. Got a dual agency on that. I then turned around, helped him buy a $70,000 house that he was working on flipping. When he got done with it, he fixed it up so nice. He said, "I'm going to live in this house. I want you to sell my house." So I go and list his $150,000 house. Got that sold. He then had some land that he let me list, so I sold that for him. I then picked up a $250,000 listing down the road because they saw my directional signs and Remax signs. off of this one deal. And I tell new agents that, my first deal was for $39,000, but it turned into a $93,000 dual agency. It then turned into a $70,000 sale, then a $150,000 sale, then a $15,000 sale and a $250,000 sale, all because I helped a guy buy a $39,000 house, and he still calls me today. And so, I've never been one to turn away a client. I felt like that $39,000 client was just as important as $1 million client. I can remember when I first started, I had a lady wanting to buy a $65,000 house, and I recommended a lender to her. And the lady must have called me 3 or 4 times saying, the lender won't call me back. He won't respond to my text. He won't respond to my email. And I called him and I said, are you not calling this lady back because it's only $65,000? And that bothered me that he didn't treat her like she was just as important as somebody buying a $500,000 house. And and I've ended up selling her 2 other properties just because I treated her, with respect. And like she was important too, even though it wasn't a big sale. Our market average sale is only $226,000.
Right.
And my average sale last year was $175,000, but I ended up with 49 sides, myself personally. So I try to treat everybody with respect and treat everybody like they're important. And I get the trickle down effect, man. They refer me to people, and it got to a point that I couldn't even handle the out of state people that were calling me. That's why I brought on a team member so she could handle the out of state people, just so that I could manage my own sphere of influence.
Yeah, that's
And
really good. I'm happy for you that that's worked that way. I mean, you're a good person. I wonder if you could give me, in our last few minutes together, if you could give me, let's just say there's somebody listening to this that is trying to start their business or has been struggling in their business. 2023 for most was not the perfect real estate year. It was hard. The rates were high, the inventory was low. It was a perfect storm, right? Can you give us some, hey, no matter what you do, don't do this? Like, it's just not going to work, or it hasn't worked for me. I just want to hear what doesn't work. You've told me a billion things that do. Tell me something that you've tried or something you would encourage your younger self. Like, don't waste your time on this.
Before you go show a buyer, have a buyer's consultation with them, meet with them, make sure they understand the process, make sure that they're pre-approved, because Lord knows I've spent, time running around for 6 months showing people properties only to find out that, they can't even buy, their credit's bad, or they've got an old tax lien they got to take care of. So learning the hard way, I would have a buyer's consultation with every buyer in your office before you ever open up a single door.
That's
That'll
great.
save you a lot of time. Save you a
Yeah,
lot of time.
and that shows a lot about your value. And if you were as good as Sean is at having those meetings and talking to people, you know why he does it, because he's the master of the craft of. Well, I mean, it's kind of a combination with you, Sean. I'm glad we've had this talk because it's different than I thought. Like, you are. I knew you were a good conversationalist because I played golf with you. I sat in the golf cart with you, and we enjoyed each other's company a couple times. I knew you were a good conversationalist and you could connect. But what I didn't know, what I learned today, is your genuine concern and care for people. I mean, I figured that might be the case, but I really hear in your voice, you just want to help people. It's like the platinum rule. You want to treat, you just said it, you want to treat them like they deserve to be treated. And the trickle down effect works for you. And I'm happy. I couldn't be more happy for you and your success. Every time I hear your name, last night, Mandy saw your name on my calendar and she goes, "Oh, I wish I could talk to Sean." I mean, you're just a happy guy to be around. You're fun. Your success is, it's not by accident, my friend. I'm proud of you, and I think you've proven today on this call. How could somebody connect to you? Imagine that somebody likes this country accent, this farmer who drove a bus, who worked at McDonald's, who's killing it in real estate. What if they wanted to connect with you? What's the best way they could connect with you, Sean?
I have this exact same phone number I've had since my very first cell phone back in probably 2000. And I can give that to you if you want it. 843-229-3448.
Now, listeners, if you did you catch what just happened? So here I am in 2024. I just asked a real estate expert. I mean, he's killing it. He's 6 years in and he just had 70 something transactions. I asked him, I said, how can we find you? How many people would say social media? How many people would say, here's my website? How many people would say whatever, TikTok me or Instagram me or Facebook me or whatever? And I know you could do all that too, but Sean, that speaks volumes. Here's my cell phone number. Let's connect. I'm hoping that somebody out there that's listening to this episode of Rise Up in Real Estate will take advantage of that. This is a gold mine that you're sitting on. You've got a phone number of a guy that I guarantee you he'd go have coffee with you. And I'm 100% sure he'd play golf with you if you invite him. Sean, any parting words for our guests today? I appreciate you being on the show very much.
You know, I think that life is about what you make it. And, you know, some people choose to, you know, sleep in late and lay in the bed all day and, you know, look for ways to get out of work. I'm completely different. You know, I'm ready to get up every day and go to work. And even on days that I don't have appointments, I still get up, get dressed, you know, like I'm going to work, even Saturday, Sunday. Sometimes my wife's like, why are you getting all dressed up? And it's time to go to work. And, you know, I'll say this, and I say this all the time. I find the harder I work, the luckier I get. So, you know, hard work really, you know, it's hard to replace that in our world. I'll share this with you. When I first started, I'd go to the office every morning for 2 hours, and then I would go out and I would network, and I would go to the cafeteria at the hospital. I would get in my car and I would do grassroots marketing. I would just go stop in businesses, and I wouldn't go home until I had handed out at least 10 business cards that day. And I share this with people too. I operate on the rule of one a lot of times. If every week I can get one buyer's agency agreement signed or one listing agreement signed, at the end of the year, I'm probably going to have 52 deals. And so every week, that's my focus. I need one buyer's agency agreement signed or one listing agreement signed. And it's a rule of one. Just get one a week, you know. And to me, that's simple. Some weeks I end up with 4. Some weeks I end up with 5. Some weeks I end up with 2. Every once in a while, I have a week where I don't get one. But you know, if I can just get one agreement signed a week, life will be good.
Yeah, well, that's excellent advice. And Sean, thank you for being here today. I'm hoping that somebody will reach out to you. I look forward to seeing you next time we can connect. We got to do golf once it gets above 50. We'll do it again. I appreciate you very much. Much success and happiness to you and your bride in 2024.
Thank you, Tad.
Well, hey, that's a wrap, folks. Thank you so much for listening to Rise Up in Real Estate. If you liked hanging out with us today, please find us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Rise Up in Real Estate. Also, follow us right now on your favorite podcast host to hear more episodes. We really appreciate you spending some of your time with us. And until next time, let's do each other a favor and all help each other rise up.